You've been talking to your bird wrong. Not occasionally. Probably every single day. And the worst part is, it's working. Your bird is learning from every word you say, every tone you use, every reaction you give. They're learning. Just not what you think you're teaching them. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand something that most bird owners spend years getting wrong. And one specific communication habit that researchers have identified as the single most damaging thing you can do to your bond. We'll get to that. Hold on to it. Most people assume that talking to a bird is simple. You say words, the bird hears them. Maybe they repeat some of them. And the rest, the cooing, the narrating your day, the high-pitched hellos, is just background noise that your bird politely ignores. And honestly, that makes sense. We grew up understanding that animals don't process language the way we do, so we tell ourselves the words don't matter much. But the science tells a completely different story. And if you've been operating under that assumption, something important has been slipping through the cracks of every conversation you've had with your bird for months, maybe longer. If the words didn't matter, why do parrots in chronic stress environments almost always mirror the emotional temperature of their primary caregiver's voice, independent of the words themselves? Why do birds with owners who speak in consistently flat, distracted tones show measurably higher cortisol levels than birds with owners who use engaged, warm speech? The issue was never about what you say. It was always about what you're actually communicating and how your bird is being trained, call by call, moment by moment, to respond to it. 1. You've been using your bird's name as a warning, and they've learned it that way. Think about how often you say your bird's name. You say it when they're doing something you want them to stop. You say it when you're frustrated. You say it when they're too loud, too nippy, too much. And you probably also say it when you love them, when you want their attention for good reasons, when you walk into the room excited to see them. But here's the part most owners miss. Your bird doesn't know the difference between those contexts the way you do. What they know is frequency and tone. And if a significant portion of the times they've heard their name, something tense followed. A sharp voice, a redirected behavior, an abrupt interaction. Then their brain has begun to associate that name with alertness, with preparation, with something uncertain on the way. Research from the Konrad Lorenz Institute for Ethology has shown that birds, including parrots, form predictive emotional associations with specific auditory triggers far faster than previously understood. Their nervous systems are wired for it. In the wild, sound is survival. A repeated sound that sometimes precedes a negative experience becomes a low-grade threat signal, not because your bird is being dramatic, because their brain is being efficient. You're not teaching your bird to behave. You're teaching your bird what to expect from you, and what they've learned may be the very thing that's keeping you apart. 2. Your excited voice has been training your bird to escalate, not connect. This one surprises people. When your bird does something you love, when they step up perfectly, or say something new, or just sit close to you, your first instinct is to celebrate it. Big voice, high pitch, rapid praise. And that feels right. It feels like connection. And hey, if this is already reshaping how you think about those daily moments with your bird, hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps us reach more owners who are ready to actually understand what their bird is going through. Now, back to the excited voice. Here's where the science gets uncomfortable. The high-pitched, fast, loud voice that you're using to show love. Your bird's nervous system doesn't receive it as warmth. It receives it as arousal, elevated stimulation, a spike in their already sensitive stress response system. Dr. Irene Pepperberg, whose decades of research with African grey parrots at Harvard and Brandeis University transformed how we understand avian cognition, found consistently that birds respond to emotional register, not emotional intent. A thrilled voice and an alarmed voice produce similar physiological responses in a parrot. What you feel and what your bird's body experiences are two different things. This is where it gets interesting. The bird who gets loud when you get excited isn't joining your celebration. They're matching your arousal state. Because that's what flock animals do. They regulate to each other. If you're loud, they go loud. If you're escalating, they escalate. Over time, what you've built isn't a joyful ritual. You've built a feedback loop where your excitement trains your bird toward a chronic baseline of elevated stimulation. And then you wonder why they're so hard to settle. 3. Your silence has been a punishment, and your bird has noticed. Most owners never think about this one. You give attention when things go wrong. You talk when there's a problem to fix. And when your bird is being calm, quiet, easy, you give them the one thing that costs you nothing. Nothing. You go about your day. You're on your phone. You're in another room. Can you picture what that actually looks like from your bird's perspective? The moments when they perform a desirable behavior, sitting quietly, playing independently, not screaming, are the moments when you disappear. The moments when they escalate, when they call, bite, or demand, are the moments when you arrive. You haven't meant to, but you've built a system, and your bird has been paying close attention to what the system rewards. Behavioral ecologists call this inadvertent reinforcement. It doesn't require intention. It only requires repetition. And research from the University of California, Davis's Avian Behavior Unit confirmed that parrots trained under this pattern, even unintentionally, show significantly higher rates of demand, vocalization, and contact-seeking aggression than birds whose calm behavior is consistently acknowledged. They weren't behaving badly. They were responding logically to the rules you wrote without knowing you were writing them. 4. Your tone when you leave has been telling your bird something is wrong. Think about how you say goodbye to your bird when you're leaving for a few hours. A lot of owners do this with a specific voice. Softer, slightly apologetic, sometimes prolonged. It feels kind. It feels like you're preparing them. What you're actually doing is signaling that something emotionally significant is happening, and your bird's nervous system files that away. Parrots evolved as animals whose survival depended on reading subtle emotional shifts in their flock. A flock member who acts unusually before leaving, who changes their tone, their tempo, their physical manner, is a flock member who may be perceiving danger. In a 2019 study published in Applied Animal Behavior Science, researchers found that dogs and parrots both showed measurably elevated stress responses when their owners displayed what the researchers called departure-associated emotional behaviors, not because the animals understood the departure, but because they had learned to associate those behaviors with a prolonged absence of their bond partner. Your bird doesn't know you're going to work. They don't know what work is. From their perspective, their flock, the single most important living thing in their world, is behaving strangely and then disappearing. And you've been narrating that strangeness with the most expressive voice you have. 5. Your reaction to screaming has been the lesson, not the correction. Here's something that might surprise you. Every time your bird screams and you respond, by coming in, by talking back, by saying their name in a firm voice, even by telling them to stop, You have completed a communication loop that your bird filed as successful. The behavior produced a result. You arrived. You engaged. The loop closed. I think this is the one that lands hardest when people really sit with it, because the correction and the reward are the same action. Coming in to stop the screaming is coming in, and coming in is precisely what the screaming was for. Dr. Susan Friedman, whose behavior analysis work with parrots at Utah State University is some of the most cited in the field, has written extensively about how owners routinely confuse response with reinforcement, and how the distinction matters enormously for birds, whose social wiring makes your attention the most valuable resource in their environment. You're not teaching your bird to behave. You're teaching your bird what to expect from you, and what they've learned may be the very thing that's keeping you apart. 6. And this is the one we planted at the beginning, the single communication habit that researchers have identified as most damaging to the bird-owner bond, more than raised voices, more than inconsistent commands, more than even prolonged absences. It's the unpredictable voice, not the loud voice, not the excited voice, not the frustrated voice, the voice that is impossible to predict. Research from the University of Veterinary Medicine in Vienna studied bonded parrot pairs and primary bond human relationships over 12 months, tracking behavioral stress indicators against owner communication patterns. The factor that correlated most strongly with chronic elevated stress in the birds wasn't negative interaction, it was variability. An owner whose emotional register was difficult to read, warm and engaged one moment, distracted and flat the next, suddenly loud, then gone, produced birds with the highest rates of feather-destructive behavior, demand vocalization, and contact aggression in the entire study. Consistency, not positivity, was the most protective factor in the relationship. Your bird isn't asking you to be happy all the time. They're not asking you to perform. They're asking you for something far more specific and far more achievable. They're asking to be able to read you, to know what's coming, to hear your voice and understand, from its shape and rhythm, what the next few minutes of their world are going to feel like. When you become readable, your bird relaxes, not because the environment is perfect, because the most important thing in their environment, you, has become safe to trust. Tell me in the comments, which of these did you recognize in yourself? I read everyone. And if you want to keep going deeper, the next video covers what your bird is actually doing the moment you walk out the door. What happens in those first 4 minutes? It's not what you'd expect. Your bird has been listening to every word you've said, and all they've ever wanted was to understand you.